Hello everyone, this is Group 4's case study presentation. Group members include Olatutu, Emily, Taisha, and Brianna. We will first look at the Toms River case study. The population at risk were individuals who lived in Toms River, New Jersey, and received drinking water from the community water supply. They were exposed to solid and liquid waste dumped in groundwater by Ciba Gigi. The children living in the town were the most susceptible at the time. During the 80s and 90s, there was an increase in the number of children with cancer, especially leukemia and tumors of the brain and nervous system. The chemicals that were involved were trichloroethene and tetrachloroethene. One mode of entry for these chemicals was ingestion. This is due to the chemical waste being disposed in areas such as Reach Farm and private and community wells, causing drinking water contamination. Inhalation can be another mode if breathed in through fumes from items such as adhesives and paint removers. Also, people who live in areas that are contaminated with tetrachlorine may be exposed to this chemical at a higher level through modes such as ingestion and inhalation. These chemicals were found in private wells and certain community wells. This leads to contamination of groundwater, which the town's drinking water came from. The health effects of these chemicals are liver damage and cancer. It also causes irritation to the eyes and skin for the chemical trichloroethene. Tetrachloroethene is also known to cause cancer. It can also cause liver and kidney effects, changes in mood, memory, attention, and reaction time. Prevention could have been possible if Ciba Gigi had followed through on their consideration of building a chemical recovery plant rather than resort to dumping the waste. Also, Ciba Gigi could have disposed of the waste through a waste treatment plant instead of disposing of it on its own property, in Toms River, or in the Atlantic Ocean. Pros and cons of interventions. We're going to look at the companies first. Ciba Gigi's participated in a public health assessment which showed the community that they were willing to take steps to improve. Reach Farm did not actively participate in the pollution found on its site. However, they also participated in a public health assessment. The Dover Township Municipal Landfill participated in a public health assessment. However, the source of contamination wasn't identified. The Toms River Water Company does not fall on the list of participants. This company actively hid the truth from the community of Toms River and did not notify them when the water contamination was confirmed. Pros and cons of the interventions from a government standpoint. So the government's actions, the New Jersey Department of Health and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection investigated the community water supply at the residents' request in 1996. They identified tremor in the Parkway well field, and those wells were closed and the water treatment system was expanded. The New Jersey Department of Health and the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry took community feedback in the form of a Citizen Action Committee on Childhood Cancer Cluster and the Ocean County Health Department to develop a public health response plan. In that public health response plan, it included evaluation of childhood cancer rates, public health evaluations of potential environmental contamination, public health education, and case control epidemiologic studies. The State Division of Fish and Game actively persecuted Ciba Gigi for destroying the river's wildlife. Also, the state failed to enforce the terms of its own discharge permits, which banned things like detectable odors. The group case study that Group 4 selected was the Flint, Michigan water contamination and crisis. The population that was at risk was every individual that lived within the Flint County zip code, the Flint community zip code. So Flint's population is relatively poor. At one point in time, Flint, Michigan was booming when the automotive business was also booming. Once those factories and plants closed down, individuals in Flint lost their job and became relatively poor. To give an insight, most of Flint's population and a large proportion of Flint's population are African Americans. Unfortunately, it fits the pattern of poor living in many physically distressed neighborhoods, and in those neighborhoods, they have typically high burdens of environmental deterioration, which includes water, and other infrastructure systems. Studies have shown that the population that suffered the most in Flint were the 9,000 children who were supplied with lead-contaminated water for over 18 months. The Michigan Civil Rights Commission concluded that the poor governmental response to the Flint crisis was a result of systematic racism. The chemicals that were involved in the Flint water contamination, the first one was lead. 99,000 residents were exposed when the drinking water source was switched from the Detroit Water Authority to Flint water systems. Ingestion, inhalation, and skin absorption of contaminated water are the modes of entry into the bodies of the Flint residents. The health effects, children specifically, lead can cause damage to the brain and nervous system, slowed growth and development, learning and behavior problems, hearing and speech problems. For adults, people with prolonged exposure to lead may also be at higher risk for blood pressure, heart disease, kidney disease, and reduced fertility. The second chemical that was involved in the Flint, Michigan water crisis was trihalomethanes, short TTHM. TTHMs enter the body via inhalation, ingestion, and absorption through the skin of chlorinated drinking water. The health effects from TTHMs include bladder cancer, skin cancer, and impairment of fetal growth and development. The Flint water crisis could have been prevented through better implementation of site-specific risk management via water safety plans and voluntary improvement programs such as Partnership for Safe Water and the Area-Wide Optimization Program. The pros and cons from the city official standpoint. So the pros were that Flint actually switches back to Detroit water supplier. An extensive lead service line replacement effort has been underway since 2016 with 9,593 pipes replaced and 16,011 copper lines serviced. The cons, which there are many of them, there were elevated blood levels of children less than 5 years old living within the Flint zip codes after the switch to Flint River water as its source. A city test revealed high lead content and other metals seeping from the city's aging pipes into the water in homes and businesses of Flint. The water supply change was also the cause of an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease from 2014 to 2015. E. coli and other bacteria were detected in Flint's water. Officials failed to apply corrosion inhibitors to the water, and the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality dropped 2 samples from its initial report on lead levels from the city, which put the result within federally mandated levels. Pros and cons from the government standpoint. This whole slide is filled with some pros when individuals finally step in to save, but it's also cons because the city did suffer for a while. But in December of 2015, the governor declares a state of emergency due to the lead in Flint's drinking water. Shortly after, President Obama declares a state of emergency, which means FEMA is authorized to move in and provide equipment and resources to the people that were affected and provide federal funding to help cover the cost of providing water, water filters, and other items. Delays in responding to the EPA's recommendation and implementation of actions necessary to reduce and minimize the presence of lead and other contaminants in the water supply created a larger issue down the line, unfortunately. Not providing sufficient information to the EPA to fully understand and respond promptly to the current deficiencies also exacerbated the issue. The best part about the Flint, Michigan water crisis is the community advocacy and the coalition efforts that the citizens created. The coalition of citizens and groups sued the city and state officials in order to secure safe drinking water for Flint residents. Among the demands of the suit, the proper testing and treatment of water for lead and the replacement of all cities' lead pipelines. In March 2016, the coalition took additional action to address an urgent need, filing a motion to ensure that all residents, including children, the elderly, and others unable to reach the city's free water distribution centers, would have access to safe drinking water through a bottled water delivery service or a robust filter installation and maintenance program. the results of the community advocacy. In November 2016, a federal judge sided with the Flint residents and ordered the implementation of door-to-door delivery of bottled water to every home without a properly installed and maintained faucet filter. A more momentous win came the following March with a major settlement requiring the city to replace the city's thousands of lead pipes, which we discussed earlier, with funding from the state, guaranteeing further funding for comprehensive tap water testing, a faucet filter installation and education program, free bottled water through the following summer, and continued health programs to help residents deal with the residual effects of Flint's tainted water. These are Group 4's references that we used for both case studies. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate your time.